We have historical reality. These Maoist revolutions take lists. They make lists. Their objective, if they have victory, is to eliminate us. So I think there's got to be a lot of people out there. The silent majority is, I believe, being quite silent with the polling. I have full confidence in the president's victory.
Joe Biden and the socialist left would be a disaster for our economy. But President Trump is leading a new era of opportunity. Before Communist China gave us the coronavirus, we were breaking economic records left and right. The pandemic has set us back, but not for long. President Trump brought our economy back before, and he will bring it back again.
Our side is working on policy, while Joe Biden's radical Democrats are trying to permanently transform what it means to be an American. Make no mistake, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want a cultural revolution, a fundamentally different America. If we let them, they will turn our country into a socialist utopia. And history has taught us that path only leads to pain and misery.
The Democrats are supposed to be the party of Hollywood. Raheem, Jack, Vish, thoughts, observations, context.
The production value was definitely higher than the Democratic convention, which to me, Steve, actually I found shocking too. I guess Vish's comment the other day that Harvey's in jail may have something to do with it. But the one thing that I found very troubling is how we keep describing them as socialists, and that socialism is the danger. I think that's too soft, Steve. When you categorize people made in the image of God, let me say that again, all people made in the image of God, and you categorize them by superficialities like the size of their foot, the color of their hair, you know, the tinge of their skin, I think you do a disservice to everybody. And this has been the mantra of the Democratic Party for 50 years, this self-identification nonsense. We're all Americans.
We had advocated that on John Frederickson, the show the other day.
I just want to interject on the story about the narrative coming out of China. Yesterday, I did an interview with a Chinese-American journalist whose parents live in China, and we were talking about this very same issue. And she said she spoke to her parents the night before, and that her parents and all their friends are convinced now that the CIA and the U.S. military introduced this pandemic into China.
Yeah, they're doing a massive, so people should understand they're doing a massive propaganda campaign inside of China. The United States can get ahead of this thing.
Well, it's the uncertainty, I think, that has been causing the problems both in the markets and I think even in the emotional context of the general population out there stocking up on toilet paper and things they don't necessarily need. But now when the president shows that the full force of government and the full force of the partnership, that we have this wonderful partnership in our capitalist society, where you have government on the one side, but you have private industry on the other, and they come together. And Steve, you talked about this, I think, a couple weeks ago. It's like World War II, like when Henry Kaiser got together and was able to build a ship in 24 hours to ship goods to Europe. This is the kind of program that the president is putting in place, and this is the kind of thing that will give people confidence.
Yeah, this was the lead story in the Daily Mail, which is the biggest news site in the world, right? And the lead story in the Daily Mail, it grabbed me. This guy said, hey, I've been a doctor for 30 or 40 years. I've never seen anything like this. These are healthy guys, and a couple of these guys are ill, and they're not going to make it.
Well, let's hope they make it.
But his implication was that the guy that's in ICU.
This is very serious.
Once you get to the ICU unit, not a lot of guys come back. That's the equivalent of going to once you're in ICU on this thing, it's like going to the quarantine center in Wuhan, right? You don't normally come back from the quarantine center.
Well, and this is why I think one of the things that we also need to be hopeful about is, whereas the vaccine might take 18 months if we're really lucky, there are some good antivirals out there.
The therapeutics.
Universities are working on this round the clock, and hopefully that can help us along the way here in the near term.
Jake, look, we're not China. We're not going to do what do they do with the phones? They track you as soon as they know it. They track everywhere you went.
There's been actually a lot of internet rumors about this idea of 17 to 22 million cell phone accounts having gone dead in China during this period of time. I would caution our listeners to try and ascribe that to 17 million dead. I think this is actually kind of a leading indicator of just how collapsed the Chinese economy is, and people stop paying the bill that's least necessary for their life.
Although I can tell you one number that's not correct, and that's the 80,000 infected and the 2,000 dead in Wuhan. And Wuhan is, I mean, look, it's the British government who has not exactly been at the cutting edge of beating up the Chinese to say the difference in the range could be 15 to 40 times, but the bottom of the lie is at least 15 times greater than they've told us. The top end of the range for them is 40 times.
Professor Balding gave us a really interesting piece of information that the Chinese government is apparently going to come out today and explain how they calculated the asymptomatic. Now, we have a lot of evidence from these barefoot doctors on the ground in China that, like everyone they're coming across is infected. They don't have any tests. The ones that they do test come up positive, and the official position of the Chinese government to date has been apparently to not count anybody who didn't end up in a hospital or in a fever ward.
Look, we know the great heroes in this. Some of the great heroes are these Chinese doctors and nurses that have been. If you want to see heart-rendering of how much this has destroyed the Chinese people, look at these heart-rendering videos we have of the ambulances leaving the hospital with the dead doctors, and it turns out their wives or girlfriends or nurses, and running down the street banging on the ambulance because they know they're not going to be there for a burial ceremony. They're going to get they're going to be cremated and put in an urn and picked up later. Then when they went and I think it was in Wuhan, the urns are 10 times more than what they said the folks that died. I mean, everything that the Chinese Communist Party says about the economy, about their debt, about how many died, it's all a lie. It's all made to promote their agenda.
And what's really poignant about these deaths in China, you have to remember that the family is everything in China, and it shows you the circle of evil that is the Communist Party of China. Their multi-decade one-child policy means that you have no family when your parents die. This is a heavily armed country. There are 400 million guns here. 89,000 were sold in the city of Minneapolis just this past month. If anybody does not think that there is a potentially extraordinarily volatile situation that is brewing on our hands, they are fools. And anybody who does not witness the mainstream media, the Democratic Party, these idiot mayors in these Democratic cities, and these agitator terrorists, they're not paying attention because they are agitating towards open conflict. And I'm just going to tell you, people, they're not going to be any second place trophies this time. There's no great moral cause to lean our muskets up again after it's over. Nobody gets to pat themselves on the back for ending slavery. This will be a killing field. It needs to stop right now. Study your history. Study the way these Maoist revolutions go. Understand their objectives. You can see this kind of horror as close as Mexico back in 1920.
Maybe I should have taken Willie's advice. I mean, he really started her career, so he's had her best interests at heart for years.
Let's keep it PG.
But listen, I'd like to go back, if you guys don't mind. I want to go back to hammering Nancy Pelosi here on
You're
China.
Always welcome to hammer Nancy Pelosi on China.
Because here's something that can be illustrated for every one of our audience. We remember that the Chinese protester movement leadership was arrested over the weekend. One of them was Jimmy Lai. Jimmy Lai owns Apple Media in Hong Kong. Now, Jimmy Lai came to the United States last October to meet with our elected representatives, one of whom he went to meet was with Nancy Pelosi. Can we put that tweet up on the screen from October 22nd? Nancy Pelosi writes, "So pleased to welcome Jimmy Lai, Martin Lee, and Janet Pang to the U.S. Capitol. My full support and admiration goes to those who have taken to the streets week after week in nonviolent protest to fight for democracy and the rule of law in Hong Kong." Also, Nancy Pelosi has basically made her entire career being the weeping hag over Tiananmen Square. Every June 4th, she puts up a heartfelt message to the world about how she stands with the Chinese students and the victims of CCP oppression. Now, one thing I find very, very interesting, everybody from Tom Cotton, Marco Rubio, Pence, Pompeo, every member of the Republican leadership has put out a statement of support for Jimmy Lai. Guess where we have total silence, both in her press releases, both in her Twitter page. You see this with that throughout the Democratic leadership. Let's be clear. They want Biden and they want to maintain this quisling relationship with the Chinese. Nancy Pelosi should be on a minstrel show. She is not somebody who is anybody that we can trust. She's like vaudeville here every single night with this woman.
I would probably say kabuki theater, but I digress. Also, if you've noticed, in the last, I believe, 48 hours, the Chinese government has sanctioned 5 lawmakers in the U.S. I don't believe any of them are Nancy Pelosi. So,
Right.
I don't know.
I think I mentioned that yesterday, right?
Yeah.
The most hated woman in America, according to Nancy, is her belief that the Chinese
China.
party hates her more than anyone. Yet no sanctions for Nancy. Do we notice? No sanctions. Not a single word of support for Jimmy
this
Lai.
morning, Jack.
Well, you know why I'm a mean girl? Because I hate hypocrisy, and I see people like Dr. Yan on here, this magnificent woman of total courage, and this should inspire all of us. And then you see Jimmy Lai, again, another man of total and absolute courage. I was looking into some stuff about Jimmy Lai yesterday, and I was absolutely touched. Jimmy Lai got involved in this whole process right after the Tiananmen Square massacres. He changed his business focus to media, away from apparel, so that he didn't have to deal with the communist mainland China. I mean, he said this in 1989 of the Tiananmen Square massacre, and it complies with everything he says today. I cried every day. I'm lost in it. Us Chinese, we are like the Jews. We are waiting for a Messiah. The students are our Messiah. He said that he used to make money just for the sake of money. But now, this is in 1989, I make money with an ideal. That ideal is freedom. Jimmy Lai has been on the lines for 31 years, putting his neck on the line. Nancy Pelosi, she's been on a stage jawboning for 31 years. Nancy, what are you going to do today about Hong Kong and to free the Chinese people? Enough talk, action, action, action.
Fiery.
Jack Maxey's fired up this morning, but she's not going to do anything, right? That's the point. So we can scream until we're blue in the face, but the point is she's not going to do anything. She's perfectly safe. She'll likely remain Speaker of the House after November. So the point is what about all? I mean, my question is, how do we get around the blockage that is Nancy Pelosi in this scenario?
Do you know how we get around it? The whole world is awakening to the idea that this conflict, whether it's kinetic or not, with the Communist Chinese Party, is a moral conflict. This is a fight between light and darkness. I ask everybody out there to troll your own conscience and decide, who do you want to be? A Chamberlain or a Churchill? The obviousness of the evil nature of this regime is for everybody to see. The Border Patrol seized 17 tons of human hair from Uyghurs in concentration camps, people. Never again. Start acting like it.
And the people outside the war room can hear as well.
Stuff that we were talking about with China
Please.
and with the Catholic Church. All of our listeners should remember all of the lives that were destroyed in the 20th century because of secret treaties, starting out with World War I, and then leading up into World War II with the Tripartite Act. These secret treaties lead to disasters. The American people, the global people, and certainly all Catholics deserve to see it.
I think there are many whites who act friendly toward Negroes. A fox acts friendly toward the lamb. And usually the fox is the one who ends up with the lamb chop on his plate. The wolf doesn't act friendly, and therefore the wolf has more difficulty in getting the lamb chop in his plate.
I'd like to point out, though, that...
And I say that because it is usually if you study the structure of the Negro community, economically, politically, civically, psychologically, and otherwise, it's controlled by the white liberal, who usually poses as the friend of the Negro, who actually differs from the white conservative in the same way that the fox differs from the wolf. Their appetite is the same. Their motives are the same. It's only their mannerisms and methods that differ.
Really, man, come on. 6 o'clock news say somebody been shot. Somebody's been abused. Somebody blew up a building. Somebody stole a car. Somebody got away. Somebody didn't get too far. Yeah, they didn't get too far.
Grandpappy told my pappy back in my day, son, a man had to answer for the wicked that he done. Take all the rope in Texas, find a tall oak tree, round up all of them bad boys, hang them high in the street for all the people to see.
That justice is the one thing you should always find. You gotta saddle up your boys, you gotta draw a hard line.
When the gun smoke settles, we'll sing a victory tune, and we'll all meet back at the local saloon.
We'll raise up our glasses against evil forces, singing whiskey for my men, beer for my horses.
Absolutely. You got your voice, man. You got a voice. Yeah, I do. This is my hometown. This is Burlington. And I ain't scared of nobody. Not now. Never. Who's trying to trip me? Where's my hat? Thank you. Got my hat back. This is Burlingame.
Where's the man?
We're gonna get our country back, man.
Hey, don't take the bait.
What's your name?
When did you have the country? When did you have the country?
What's your name? What's that?
When did you have the country?
About 1920.
1920, the country was great.
My family came to Burlingame.
Really?
Now, when did your family come to Burlingame? There's a show,
My family ain't in no Burlingame.
Okay, then what town are you in?
Little bit.
Okay, there you go.
1920, huh? 1920, huh?
Trump!
Excuse me, sir. What's your name?
Trump!
What's your name, sir?
Christopher Conway.
Christopher Conway, where are you
Conway,
from?
I'm from Burlingame.
And why did you come out here today?
Because I live that way. And
You're wearing this hat and this crowd you knew was going to start a problem, you know?
Why is that?
Christopher Conway?
Investigation.
Well, I mean, your hat.
Why is wearing this hat?
Oh, well, not just wearing the hat. Chris Conway.
Stepping over people,
People are saying you're doing
hitting
this to
people.
debate to like
What about
stir it
that?
up. Is that true?
Why is he wearing this
Why
hat?
are you
There's a lot of questions.
So lucky, dude. You're so lucky.
Why am I lucky?
Keep the voice saved your ass.
Someone just This is great.
I would agree that no doubt there have been a large number of whites who have posed as liberals and as friends of the Negro and who have time and again betrayed the Negro. On the other hand, I think one could point to a large number of whites who have struggled for civil rights, for equality, and have got little or nothing out of it, other than quite a few bruises.
Give me an example.
Well, the large number of white students who have gone into the South, for example, working for SNCC and other organizations.
Not working for SNCC or other organizations, but working for the white political machines who benefit by the voting efforts of Negroes.
Okay, I'll be more specific. I would cite Herbert Hill, for example, as a kind of person who has championed Negro job rights, for example, in New York City and elsewhere. He has fought the political machine.
First time I met Herbert Hill personally was when they were picketing to stop the working on the Harlem Hospital in Harlem. Negroes for 10 years had to fight the city to get an annex built on the Harlem Hospital. Because in Harlem we need a hospital more so than anything else. Our people are sick. Plus we do a lot of cutting and shooting of each other, though we profess to be nonviolent. And Herbert Hill brought his forces out and stopped the working on that site. This is the first time I ever saw it. Then when work was brought to a halt on a hospital in Harlem, the same Negroes tried to stop the work at the Downstate Medical Center in Brooklyn, which is predominantly white. They were out there for 3 months during the summer. Couldn't stop anything. And I never saw Herbert Hill out there one time. Now, whenever it takes a stoppage of something that's going to affect the white man, you find the white liberal absent. But when it involves something that primarily will affect the best interests of black people, and black people only, then that white liberal is present. Herbert Hill is the labor secretary for the NAACP. And if he was interested in black people, he would prepare a black man with the type of knowledge and understanding of the labor troubles involving black people that would enable a black man to sit in the same position as Secretary of Labor or Labor Secretary in the NAACP. I'm suspicious of whites who join Negroes and always have to be in the lead, who always have to be the head, who always have to be at the top in Negro organizations. Those whites who really have the interest of blacks at heart, let them give some advice to some Negroes and stand on the sideline. But don't join the organization and then get at the head of it and pose as a friend of Negroes.
Well, I would defend his sincerity and his commitment. And more than that, I would say that just because a person is a Negro or a black American does not mean that he's going to struggle for Negro rights or for jobs for Negroes or anything else. I think that today you could point to a large number of Negro leaders who have consistently betrayed Negroes in a whole host of areas.
They aren't really Negro leaders. These are puppets that have been put in front of the Negro community by white liberals. These are parrots that have been put in front of the Negro community by white liberals. You can't name me a Negro leader who has been betrayed Negroes, who has not been endorsed, sanctioned, subsidized, and supported by the white liberals.
We'll raise up our glasses against evil forces, singing whiskey for my man, beer for my horses. Singing whiskey for my man, beer for my horses.
These guys are kicking me. Come on, come on. Walk out. This guy's a good man.
Preacher man says it's the end of time, and the Mississippi River, she's a gold dry. Industry is up and the stock market's down, and you're only getting young if you go downtown. You gotta get him out of here? You gotta push him right back? You see, the woman and the kids and the dogs and me. I got a shotgun, a rifle, and a four-wheel drive, and a country boy can survive. Country boy can survive. I can water fields all day long. I can catch catfish from dusk till dawn. Whiskey and a old smoke too. Ain't too many things these old boys can't do.
I kind of expected it. This is my hometown. I've been kicked. I've been punched. But I ain't going nowhere. This is really my hometown. Trump. I gotta show you.
We say, ma'am, if you ain't into that, we don't give a damn. We came from the West Virginia coal mines and the Rocky Mountains and the western skies. And we can skin a buck, we can run a trot line, and a country boy can survive. Country folks can survive. I had a good friend in New York City. He never called me by my name, just Hillbilly.
I walked to
My grandpa taught me how to live off the land, and his taught him to be a businessman. He used to send me pictures of the Broadway nights, and I'd send him some homemade wine. But he was killed by a man with a switchblade knife. For $43, my friend lost his life. I'd love to spit some beach nut in that dude's eyes and shoot him with my old 45, cause a country boy can survive. Country folks can survive.